we've really gotten mixed up more and more in situations where countries threaten us with their ballistic missiles.
Sweetheart, if they did fire something at us, we can handle it. We just shoot them down. They really can't get to us with those things.
Yeah. I've still got a bad feeling about all this talk of missiles being fired at us. There's been so much happen just in the past week. The tensions have gotten really high, and all that diplomatic stuff sure hasn't worked.
Don't worry. There's been plenty of time and more than enough people to have already taken care of these things. Look, Bill, no one's really going to do anything to us. But the United States of America, for goodness sakes. With all that money our country spends on defense, we've got that covered. Now, come on. Yeah.
This is
Mommy?
not a test. Repeat, this is not a test.
No.
What's happening?
This is a belief broadcast system.
This is it. It's all over.
Bill, where are we supposed to go?
There is nowhere to go.
Then what do we do? Rachel, come here right now. Bill, what do we do? Please tell me, Bill.
It didn't have to be like this. Things could have been different. How often do any of us remember that the threat is real? But the technology to defend ourselves does exist, and the capability for a working nuclear missile defense has been demonstrated. In fact, our government has proven that it can be done. Now it's time to begin defending our nation from this threat. Don't let this opportunity slip through our fingers again.
Bear in mind, this was 26 years ago. Taiwan, China, ballistic missile threat. Where are we now? We're further along. Far from not being at risk. This movie was, as I indicated, was given or was supplied to and mailed out to and received, acknowledged from the states and Congress, all our legislative body. National legislative body. And I believe it did move the ball at least a little bit. Matter of fact, I've been trying to find this film for quite a while, and I found it in state archives in Arizona. You got to go out there, you just Google it, you can find it somewhere. All these things everything exists anymore, man. I hope you enjoyed it, but anyway, I just wanted to show that to you. It's something that Special Defense Working Group did 26 years ago with a group of us. So, we're very fortunate today to have with us a very special guest. And I'm going to tell you, you may not know how hard it is to get senior leaders or to obtain senior leaders like this, Army senior leaders and DoD senior leaders, DOW senior leaders, because of the process that they themselves must go through, and their organizations must go through in order to gain permission or get permission to permitted to come. And we've been working on this for quite a while. I must say, but we're very fortunate if you're persistent. I think the word here is if you're persistent enough, you can get a lot of things done. You may not be able. I used to say you can get most anything done, but you get a lot. You get a lot more done if you're not persistent. Let's put it that way. So we're very fortunate. We persisted, and with the patience and the desire of our special guest this morning, he persisted and went forward and obtained authority and permission to come. So we're very fortunate to have him. I'm going to tell you a little about him. How many of you do not know Jim Kirsch, Dr. Jim Kirsch? Everybody knows him? Okay, there's one back there. So you're going to get, well, Dr. Kirsch is, as Bob, Dr. Lindquist indicated, is a three-time, he's a trifecta graduate of UAH. So you got half my bio, half my introduction right there. Of UAH. He got his bachelor's in optical science, I think, and then proceeded to get the double E, was it? The master's and PhD programs here at UAH. So he is a local product, and that just goes to show you how good products we produce in North Alabama here. He was first appointed some 7 years ago to the Senior Executive Service. In July of 2019, he serves as the director of DEVCOM, AvMC, and PAE Fire's Systems Center. And that's what he'll be explaining a little bit about today, which we had some really good discussions about. Well, additional responsibilities or different responsibilities as the Army's acquisition transformation initiative has taken place, which caused the portfolio of executives to stand up. He leads a workforce of just over 11,000 people, engineers, scientists, and researchers and support staff, delivering life cycle engineering and advanced technologies as required by the Army's strategic priorities. Under his direction, DEVCOM AvMC is responsible for delivering collaborative and innovative aviation and missile capabilities for responsive and cost-effective research, development, and life cycle engineering solutions. He's been around a long time. He's done a lot of things, and we're very proud to have him. He's got many awards and recognitions by the Department of War and by the Army. We're very, and he's certified in AvMC level 3 in systems, I believe, system planning. But he's a member of the Army Acquisition Corps. He's done it all, been there, seen it all, and we're very fortunate to have him. I'll give a warm working group welcome to Dr. James Kirsch. Dr. Kirsch.
So I have to say, every time Bob or Joe or somebody stands up and says, I graduated 3 times for UAH, I keep thinking they're going to say he came back 3 times and he finally got it right on the 3rd time. But three-time graduate out here, great program. Just driving out here this morning, it's been a few months since I was out here, and I was commenting to my executive officer that, wow, that new engineering building has just gone up incredibly fast, which is a signal to all of us that UAH is committed to supporting the local community and the nation at large in providing the experts that we need to go forward. Joe mentioned 11,000 employees that we have out there. That's about 850 less than we had a year ago. We lost about 850 government employees in the last year. But the ones that are still there, about 2,500 government, the rest of them industry partners like you, are critical to solving and answering questions that came up today. So we'll talk a little bit about what changes have occurred in the Army over the last year, talk a little bit about what are the priorities for, particularly in science and technology that are going forward, and then talk a little bit about what are some of the things that are coming up in the future that might be of interest to you. All right, so in order to help us align with where the Army is going, we've done a reorganization, or we're in the midst of a reorganization within the Aviation and Missile Center. So I want to make sure you do who are the people you need to be talking to as you continue to come forward and tell us what you can do for us in support of our Army. And so some of the things will look kind of familiar, some of the faces will look kind of familiar, but and we'll talk a little bit about what this means. But as always, we have 2 primary equities that we're supporting for the United States Army. One is obviously fires, and we call it fires, and I'll show you a picture of fires in a minute, and you'll understand why we don't call it missiles in space anymore. We call it fires because it's not just missiles anymore. And then over on the far side there, you'll see Dr. Stephanie Reitmeyer as our Maneuver Air Directorate, SES. And so Maneuver Air is, again, a construct out of the Army Transformation Initiative, but predominantly she's responsible for coordinating all of the engineering support across the Army that goes in support of everything having to do with Maneuver Air for the United States Army. And then there in the middle, Mr. David Zecker, one of the positions that we lost over the last year was we lost that 3rd senior executive position that we had, but that's okay. We adapted and we overcame. And we have Mr. David Zecker as our director for what we're calling strategic technology and integration. And that really is those elements that support both air and fires. So think about things like software development, or mission assurance, or cyber, or production or quality, or all of those at the PIF, all of those things that support across both air and fire fall underneath David, and he'll do a great job leading that for us going forward. Now, the other thing that you'll notice there's a lot of vacant boxes where our senior scientists used to be, because they also left in the last year. We think we're getting close to filling the radio frequency or the radar science and technology senior scientist position. And then Dr. Mahendra Bhatla on the far side over there is our remaining aviation senior scientist. The other thing that's not shown on this chart, but it comes into play later as I talk about how we're going to operate, is as we are trying to be more effective and more efficient in support of those two main priorities there, we have created a competency under each of those areas in program management or program execution. Because in general, over the past 60 years that we've been around, we didn't really spend a lot of time focused on developing project engineers or project management experts, but it's something that we need to do. And it also gives us the ability to see all the work going forward. We're in the process of competing right now. The two leaders for those two program management legs of our organization that will fall under, there'll be one under fires and one under maneuver air, but they will be your entry points as you want to come in and say, hey, we've got this great idea, or hey, we've got somebody who wants to leverage some of the Army capabilities. Those will be the entry points for you. And as soon as we have those leaders selected by the end of June, we'll make those known to you so you know where to go for that. Another big change for us over, in fact, I'm just back this week from Moffett Field, California, is we are transferring all of our people who were sitting out there at Moffett Field doing aviation S&T research. We are transferring them to either Huntsville or to Fort Eustis. And that really is to gain some additional synergy in terms of having those aviation experts, those aviation subject matter S&T experts co-located with the larger Army aviation community, either here with us in the PAE or up at Fort Eustis, where we do all of our experimental flight activities. That doesn't mean, however, that we are changing our relationship with NASA, because we just celebrated this week over 62 years of collaboration between the Army and NASA in rotorcraft activities, rotorcraft S&T, and they have some very unique facilities out there. The largest wind tunnel in the world, the National Full-Scale Aerodynamics Complex sits out there, and the vertical motion simulator out there, which gives us a high-fidelity, motion-enabled simulation that enables us to practice and develop rotorcraft controls for the very complex environments we're going to be operating in going forward. So two great capabilities that they have out there, and we will continue to be going out there and leveraging those capabilities as we need to. All right, as Joe mentioned, the Army has changed. And what you may have used to know, and you probably heard these terms before, but what we used to call program executive offices are gone. And we now have portfolio acquisition executives. And the portfolio acquisition executives are ASALT entities. So that organization still falls under ASALT, but we have a very unique role in T2COM in supporting that. We are what they are calling one of their enabler organizations. So one of the things that they've done with the portfolio acquisition executives is, in addition to the acquisition function that they provide, they've also brought in and given them an enabler community that includes requirements. So the requirements people that are part of Futures and Concepts Command are now also enablers or direct support to those PAEs. Contracts, so they have a senior contracting official now. So they are now direct support to those PAEs. Legal, they now have direct support. Logistics, direct support. So what they have done is, underneath that portfolio acquisition executive, they have given them the capability to essentially own all of the pieces that make them successful in taking ideas and concepts and turning them into capabilities in the hands of warfighters. So it ties all of those disparate pieces together in a way that we haven't seen since, I would say, back in the 90s. When AmCom owned it all, for example, those of you who've been around long enough, you remember all of the PMs and the labs and contracts and personnel, and everybody worked for AmCom, and then we broke it all up and centralized everything. And we've had success over doing that, but the Army said, in order to go faster, we need to sort of put some of those entities back together. And that is what the portfolio acquisition executives are responsible for. So for AvMC, what that means is we are now the Systems Center lead for PAE fires. So General Frank Lozano, PAE fires, and we are direct support to him from a Systems Center standpoint. But that means that it's not just AvMC. That means it's all of the equities within things like Space and Missile Defense Tech Center, the Engineering Research and Development Engineering Center down at Vicksburg, and all of the DEVCOM labs that support or have fires equities are now part of that systems center, and I am responsible for coordinating all of that effort in support of General Lozano. Same thing on the maneuver air side. So Dr. Stephanie Reitmeyer is responsible for doing that same thing for General Gill as the PAE for maneuver air. And so she is reaching out across all of the DEVCOM entities, ERDEC, not really anything, I guess it's Space and Missile Defense Tech Center, except some of the sensors. And then also the U.S. Army Aviation Research Lab down at Fort Rucker, the SMDWG work they do now falls underneath the System Center umbrella going forward. So it really is an ability now for that PAE in their area of responsibility to have the ability to set the priorities and the investments that all of the elements that go into providing capability in the hands of soldiers. And that is the only measurement of success. Did we put kit in the hands of soldiers and give them capability that they didn't have yesterday? That's the measure of success. And they've now given those portfolio acquisition executives the authority and all of the support they need to make that happen. To include the ability to say, hey, I know you've asked for X. I can't give you X. I can give you 75% of X today, or I can wait another 5 years and give you 100%. I recommend we move forward and give you 75%. And he has the ability to go to the Chief of Staff of the Army and say, that's what I recommend. The Chief of Staff of the Army has the ability to say, go forth and do likewise. Or no, I really want you to continue to push it to that 100%. I will tell you that in most cases, we're going to take the 70 or 75% solution if we can have it tomorrow versus the 100% solution that we've got to wait another 5 or 6 years for. And that doesn't mean that we're going to stop at the 70 or 75%, but 75% today and build towards that 100% capability is probably much better in today's environment than waiting another 5 or 10 years for that 100%. All right, so why is it called PAE fires now? Well, because not only is it responsible for a lot of the things that you've seen before, all of those different missile equities, but you'll see on there that we now have all of the Army's big guns are now part of PAE fires. Okay? You will also see on there that directed energy is now part of PAE fires. And you will also see that things like long-range hypersonic weapon and the mid-range capability now part of PAE fires. So largest portfolio in the Army. Largest portfolio in the Army. The other thing that you might, that's not quite on the chart yet, but you may be reading out in the news, is that THAAD is going to transition from MDA to the Army starting in October. So FY27, THAAD is going to be part of PAE fires going forward. And they're going through all of the paperwork right now to move the people and the money and all of the things that go along with that under the purview of PAE fires. All right, so what are our priorities? What are the priorities that General Lozano has given me as the Systems Center Director, and what are the priorities that General Gill has given Dr. Reitmeyer as the Air Systems Center, and for us to prioritize our S&T investments? So on the offensive fire side, General Lozano is fond of using the phrase, I need scaled hypersonics. Okay, we've got the long-range hypersonic weapon. It does what it was designed to do, goes a really long way, it goes really fast, and is really, really, really expensive. I need some things that go almost that fast and almost that far at different echelons that are much more affordable to encompass all of the echelons of fight that I'm going to be in. So what he said is, I need something else that has a range in excess of 2,000 kilometers. So right now, you all are probably aware that we're working on Prism Increment 4. The idea behind Prism Increment 4 is to hit 1,000 kilometers. And so now he's asking us, hey, go look at S&T investments that gets us out to 2,000 kilometers or more. I don't want to slow down. I still want at least Mach 10. Yeah, I got it. Things like ATACMs and other missiles that we have go Mach 5, Mach 6 or so, but I need Mach 10. We need to get out there, and we need to get out there in a hurry. I want a seeker on it because I want to hold moving and relocatable land and maritime targets at risk. It's going to take me a little bit of while to fly, even at Mach 10. It takes some time to fly 10 kilometers. So I need to be able to find those things that have moved around in the interim so that I can kill them when I get there. Okay? And because I'm going to be flying, some things might change, so I need the ability to give that missile an in-flight target update. Now, for those of you who have been in the hypersonic realm, we put some really exotic materials on the outside of that missile because when you're flying that fast, things get really, 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 really hot, and we need to survive that. And now we're going to have to figure out how to cut a couple of holes in it so we can put an antenna for those in-flight target updates, and we can put the antenna or the lens for seeker to see through. So two big challenges going forward. And then finally, we talked about missile defense in the movie. Finally, I need some agility in that missile because frankly, right now, almost all of the air defense systems in the world, including ours, including our adversaries, depend on being able to predict where that missile is going and where it's coming down. Okay? Because normally we fly ballistic trajectories. So I need some maneuverability to where I can either not fly a ballistic trajectory in plane, I might need to be able to coast for a while and then change, or maybe I need some agility out of plane so that I can come around the backside or on the side of that target that I'm going after. So those are the priorities from an offensive fire standpoint that he has given us. On the defensive fires, it's very simple. I need mass and I need affordability. Probably you all noticed that last week the Army published sources sought for a low-cost interceptor, something that doesn't quite do everything that Patriot does, because we all know Patriot's the best in the world. We also know it's really expensive. And so I need something that does almost what Patriot does, but I only want it to cost $1 million. Okay? Or if you can do it for half that, that's even better. And so you saw in that there is a very, very, very tight timeline. They want to award contracts by the end of the summer, and they want to be doing flight testing here. That's pretty aggressive. So from a technology standpoint, we want to take that same approach in terms of we need it to be lower cost, not quite as capable. I mean, when you trade off cost, you're probably going to take a performance hit. But I need to be able to do that again at all echelons. Everything from very small unmanned counter system, counter UAS kinds of things, all the way up to mid-range kind of things, and all the way up into Patriot class kinds of things. So our technology efforts are going to be looking at kind of that lower end, below Patriot kind of threshold. Some of you have been around for a while, maybe remember a few years ago, we did an SMD program called Lower AD, Lower Air Defense. And we set ourselves the goal of what kind of performance can we get out of an air defense missile for $400K. And we demonstrated some things, and at the time the Army said, no, I don't think I need that right now. Now the Army is saying, hey, there's a lot of threats out there, and there's way more threats out there than I can afford to send a Patriot missile after. So I need much, much, much lower cost capability that I can buy in mass. It's all about mass now. As we've seen, not only through the last several years of war in Ukraine, but we've seen it in the news and in the reports you've probably seen from the Middle East as we've tackled challenges in Iran. So low-cost interceptors at all ranges and against all threats. Directed energy. We still believe long-term directed energy is the way to get after really low costs. Because once you invest in having that directed energy capability out there, it's pennies to take the shot, right? So that's probably long-term a lot of the solution, particularly for the close-in fight. But we're not quite there yet in terms of being able to mass produce at an affordable rate directed energy systems for the field. So that's where we're going to continue to invest science and technology. And the last thing up there is something we call the Common Fires Radar. So back on the list of all of the things that you saw that PAE Fires has, they have things like the Patriot Radar, the THAAD Radar, the newest Patriot Replacement Radar, LTAMs, Sentinel-A3 and Sentinel-A4, all air defense type radars. They also, you saw up there, have things like Q-53 and Q-50, counter battery radars, things that look for those RAM and artillery shells coming in, or even some missiles coming in, and look at, okay, I need to calculate where did that come from so that I can take out the archer before they could shoot at me again. Wouldn't it be great if we could put that capability into one radar that we have to maintain, because we'll buy more of them, so they should be cheaper. Because it's a common radar, they should be sustainable, easier to sustain. It just, it helps us on the cost curve from beginning to end. Now, obviously, that's a really tall challenge, because the things that you're doing, the algorithms that you use for air and missile defense type radars, and the algorithms that you would use for counter battery radars, different class of targets, and also where you're looking is different. So how do we do that in a combined arms? And right now, we're in the process of saying, hey, what's within the realm of the possible? And so, you got some ideas? They're all ears. Come and talk to us about that. Autonomy. A lot of things going on in the autonomy world, and it kind of spans the gamut from what we might do on the ground to what we might do in the air. And so things like the autonomous launcher, or camel, that you've probably heard. We've demonstrated that we can double the firepower of a HIMARS launcher by cutting the cab off and making it on an autonomous platform. Double the firepower. The Army is now looking at, okay, I want to do that same thing, but I want a common launcher that can do both the air defense and the offensive fires mission. Not going to put the same missiles in the same pod, but I want the same launcher to be able to take on a pod of air defense capability or a pot of offensive fires capability, and I want to increase my firepower and decrease the number of soldiers it takes to support it. Things like AI-driven fire control. I mentioned that you can see that mass is becoming a huge deal, especially with the proliferation of low-cost UAS systems. And so AI decision-making in terms of, as we see that threat coming in, who's the right shooter to take out that threat? And we can't do that with just a person. People are really good, but they're not nearly as fast as machine learning, and we can get overwhelmed. So how do we do AI in fire control? From an aviation perspective, optimally manned. Doesn't mean right off the bat I'm going to take my pilots out of the aircraft, but what it does mean is what can AI bring to the fight to help them do their jobs better. Because right now, the workload on our aviation crew members is incredible. It means, how do I fight storms? How do I use my launch effect capability, our own UAS capability? How do I use that and use AI to drive that fight so that I have one operator that's controlling not just one swarm, but multiple swarms carrying out different missions? And then, of course, on the launch effect side, or the small drone side, the payloads that we put on there, the sensors that we put on there, how we make them survivable in a contested environment. And of course, we want these things to be attritable, which means they need to be cheap because I need to buy them in mass. probably saw that the president's budget came out. They want to increase the investment in this space to $55 billion. A whole lot of money. Because right now, we don't have it. All right, so I talked a lot about what makes the System Center different than the old PEO construct. But really, it boils down to putting everything underneath the auspices of the PAE to set priorities, putting everything under the auspices of the PAE to be able to trade off capability, to get capability into the hands faster, and it means working with industry much more closely to say, what does industry already have that I can take today, or with a little bit of investment that I can mature a little bit and get out after the capabilities that we don't have today, but desperately. Okay? So you're gonna see a lot more things like what we did with Prism Increment 4. We were going down a path, we had down selected to a single competitor. The Army said, hey, I need more people in the game and I want them to have skin in the game. So we recompeted that and said, hey, we want at least 4 people. We're gonna give you a little bit of money. We're gonna provide the test range. You bring your capability, you bring your dollars, self-fund to an extent, and come show us what you got. And we're doing the same thing with low-cost interceptor, right? Same thing. You're gonna see that happen more and more and more and more going forward, where we're asking industry to say, hey, if you have capability that you've invested in, we want to see it, and we want you to have some skin in the game, at least to the point where we're convinced we really got something, and then we'll help you finish it. Okay. All right, I think we've covered all of that as well. We're really talking about moving much, much, much faster. Okay, really all about getting capability out much, much, much faster. All right, something that you might be interested in, how is this reorganization within DEVCOM AvMC going to shape our contract strategy? And I know we established a precedent several years ago of publishing a white paper every spring that says, here's what our contracting strategy looks like. And last year, we didn't do it. And we didn't do it because, frankly, it was just an uncertain world. We didn't know what those things were gonna look like. All of our contracts were under scrutiny. All of the funding was under scrutiny. We just didn't know enough to be able to tell you this is what we're going to do going forward. Same thing as we came into this year, really didn't know enough to be able to say exactly where do we want to go with our contract strategy. Because we're asked to be much more efficient in what we're doing in contract. Not only did we lose a lot of people, but ACC lost a people, our contracting arm lost a lot of people. And so how can we do this much more efficiently and much more effectively? And how do we ensure that as we look at this strategy, which on the first blush says we're going to consolidate a bunch of stuff, but what we don't want to do is reduce opportunities for small business. So where's the right balance between more efficient contracting while at the same time maintaining our ability to keep a lot of opportunities for small business primes out there as well. So we're still working through that. One of the things that we're doing as part of our reorganization to get more efficient is we are consolidating our contracting at the center level rather than at the director level. So all of our contracts will be managed out of the center. All of our 1101s, our contracts analysts will be at the center. There'll be the CORs on the contract. And then the tech monitors, the people that you're most directly interfacing with, are going to be in that program management leg of the organization. So that's where the action will take place. Yes, sir.
Central level, AvMC or system centers?
AvMC. Yeah, AvMC. Yeah, I'm not tackling yet trying to, but I will tell you that the PAEs are looking at how can they do contracting, because again, they have contracting authority now. How can they do contracting that also gives us the ability as a system center, from that perspective, to leverage their contract rather than having to do our own contract. So to be determined exactly how that works out. I don't see that, well, I say I don't see that as much on the S&T side, but I'll tell you, for example, on the prison meet 4 that I just talked about, that's an OTA, but it's an OTA that's managed out of PAE fires because that means we get direct access to their scope. And it's a contract, or sorry, it's an OTA, so it's not a contract. And it's an agreement that's being set up with a CLIN to do the S&T work and a CLIN to do the acquisition piece so that we can move seamlessly under the same contract from the S&T work we're gonna do with the rodeo, with the fly off over the next few years, and then seamlessly move it into a qualification phase under the same agreement. So we're looking at those kind of things in terms of an acquisition approach. Okay. We are going to release our white paper again this fall, and we also are going to do an industry day on our contract. Now, I know last time we did an industry day, we learned a lot. And one of the things that we learned is just having an industry day where we say these are the contracts is not helpful enough for you. So this time, when we do it in the fall, we will tell you, hey, here's the contracts, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. Here's the contracts, here's the schedule, but we're also going to spend more time talking about those priorities that I just laid out for you, what we're doing both from an S&T perspective and from an engineering support perspective to the PAEs. And so probably do some panels where you have the ability to ask questions about priorities. We'll allow time for some one-on-ones where you can talk about some things that you've been working on. And try to make it a much more interactive industry day so that it's much more beneficial for you. But at the same time, one of the things I want to double down on is that we need to understand, we'll share with you what our priorities are. We need to understand where you're investing. Because if you're investing in a technology or in a capability, then I'm going to look at that as an opportunity to say, I don't want to duplicate what you're doing. I either want to leverage what you're doing, or I want to fill in a hole that you have, or I want to do something that makes a more effective use of the money rather than just duplicating what you're doing, which means that we've got to have a lot more dialogue about what you're investing in so that I know where I can take some risk, okay? That's coming down all the way from Secretary of War. Look at what industry is doing and don't feel like the Army or the Department of War has to invest in areas where industry's already got it, industry's already got plenty of investment, industry's already maybe even leading in those technology areas. So we don't have to invest precious Army S&T dollars in that. We can invest in areas that either add to your capability or supplement your capability, or maybe look a little farther out in something that you haven't thought about. Okay. All right. So this is the chart you're probably very interested in. These are the contracts we have coming out over the next year. You're going to see this same chart again next week as part of the ACC halt that they do every year. So you see the same information and a lot of the same information that I shared with you today in terms of our priorities. But that's what we're doing as it stands today. All right, great. Now, I've talked a lot. What did I not answer for you? Yes, sir.
Sir Phil Coker from Hartsburg Group. Thanks for this incidentally good rundown, much appreciated. Can you articulate how you are dividing UAVs between the two areas of responsibility of fire and aviation?
Yes.
Because clearly it plays on both sides.
Yeah, it's interesting you asked that because last week I was in Indianapolis. OSW, RNE, PA. So underneath research and engineering is a new organization called PA, Prototyping and Engineering. And that organization is taking what used to be known as the Raider money, so big chunks of money, and investing in ideas that industry is bringing forward. And then if it pays off and there is a need to transition that into, say, a PAE, for example, then they're also setting up to provide 2 years of funding to the PAE to give the PAE a chance to pump for those dollars going forward. So this last week was focused on counter UAS to a large extent, and one of the ways that we're doing counter UAS is you might refer to them as kamikaze drones, right? You take another small UAS and either fly it up next to and detonate, or fly it into the. I saw someone last week that shot nets out and dropped them. Some shot streamers out, got tangled in the rotors. But so I asked that very question because in general we have looked at UAVs and said, hey, if they are one way, if they're a one-way attack drone, then we're going to kind of treat those as missiles. And so I asked the question, well, okay, what about these one-way counter-UAS capabilities? And the answer is that PMUAS really sees that as part of their space, because the way they're kind of looking at it is the platform itself is a, I hate to use the word truck, but it's almost like it's a truck, and I can put on whatever payload package I need for it to do whatever I need it to do. And so they see that more as their space. Whereas from a fire's perspective, certainly they're looking at things that are purpose-built to be one thing and one thing only, either that one-way attack or that long-range or counter UAS mission. And particularly when you come to arming it, all the things that go into putting a warhead on something and arming it, certainly that expertise is in the fire side of the house, not the air side of the house. So, I think the answer to your question is, if you're focused on the platform piece, that's a UAS, UAS area, air area. But one of the things we agreed on is that when you start talking about counter UAS, for example, and one-way attack, then we really need to be working very, very closely together across air and fires to ensure we're not duplicating efforts. Yeah, great question. Yes, sir.
Nice. Elijah Evans with Dean's Research. Yeah, thanks again for taking the time to come.
Sure.
I know you're very, very busy. We do a lot of cyber S&T for you guys for decades. Can you talk a little bit more about that 75% versus 90%? What do you see AvMC's role in taking those capabilities from 75 to 90? And your S&T priorities and your portfolio, what portion of that is just targeted at getting that 75%, and how are we looking at getting?
Right. Yeah. So I think the best way to answer that is to say one of the areas we've identified that we're going to focus on from a system center PAE relationship is we need to start up front with understanding what's the acquisition strategy. Historically, we've all agreed on, hey, we want to invest in this area, and we'll go off and do something kind of divorced from what the acquisition plan may be to actually take that thing and turn it into capability or kit in the hands of soldiers. And I think it's very apparent that now, with so many different options available to us, that we've got to work very closely up front with deciding what's the acquisition strategy going to be, and how does S&T help that? If it's a upgrade to an existing system, then probably we need to be working very, very closely with that prime. If it's a brand new capability, then we need to be working with a lot of different vendors that are going to provide competing capabilities, right? As opposed to historically, we've done, we'll start with many, but we keep having to down select, and we only have one at the end because that's all the money we've got, so we're going to take a different approach. So it's going to be, I can't tell you that X% of our S&T budget's going after that 75 or 100 capability gap. What I can say is that we're working very tightly with the PAEs to understand where are they going and how do we help them get from where they are to where they need to be. sorry, that's probably not as firm an answer as you're looking for, but it really does come down to ongoing dialogue with where do we need that. Yes, sir.
How are the service branches providing resources to develop some of this technology? The laser technology should be very common.
Mhm. Yeah.
Video distance one, second for ship versus the base.
Yeah.
Are we providing funds?
Yeah, well, I would say in some areas, yes, and in some areas, no. So for example, long-range hypersonic weapon, right? So that was a joint service Army, Navy, funded activity, with the Army being slated as the first service to field, because we were going to field into the essentially existing infrastructure, if you will, whereas the Navy's goal was to integrate it on destroyers and subs that had not been built yet. So that's an example of where we partnered together to deliver that capability. The mid-range capability that I mentioned is leveraging the Navy's, it's an Army capability that the Army said, you need to develop this capability, but it's leveraging the Navy's Tomahawk and SM-6 missiles. In directed energy, OSW is funding what they call the Joint Laser Weapon System, which all the services are looking at. How do we take that into filling the technology gaps that we have in our individual services? So I would say, yes, there's a lot of discussion and a lot of collaboration. One of the things you find out, though, is when you really start getting into the nitty-gritty details of taking a capability and turning it into kit, that the Army requirements and the Navy requirements and the Air Force requirements are very different. The environments that we operate in are very different. The way we transport things are very different. And so frankly, the Army puts a lot of emphasis on mobility and surviving, moving from place to place, because we can't sit still. And we're not on a ship that can move around real easily. So our environment, we don't put things in nice air-conditioned spaces. I mean, we really have some strict requirements that we put on the ability of our system to survive. So sometimes when you get to that final stage of, hey, I've demonstrated a capability, now I have to get it into the hands of soldiers or sailors or airmen, sometimes that's where the challenges come in. One of the items you saw on that chart up there is Blackbeard. Blackbeard is actually an Air Force Castilian activity for an air-launched hypersonic missile, and the Army is working with them on a ground-launched variant. So same basic missile, but now I got to get it off the ground, not off an aircraft, and so there's different things that go into that. So we're trying to do better in that area, and certainly in the basic technology arenas, we're trying to do better. I will tell you that OSW-RNE is taking a hard look at all of the laboratories across OSW and trying to determine how can we be more efficient and effective with our labs, given some of the things that you mentioned. And so one of the things that they've looked at is, particularly when you start in the 6.1, 6.2, the very basic research, the early development activities, how do we partner those labs together in a more effective manner?
Other questions, folks, please? Great opportunity, don't let it pass. Please, okay.
Yes, sir.
Tom Brown, Lockheed Martin. You have a large portfolio of weapons, offense, defense, all the various things. You talk a little bit about autonomy.
Yes.
Autonomy only goes so far. Can you talk a little bit about the strategy from a fighter's perspective in terms of command and control in a very new environment?
I'm sorry, what?
In a very new environment.
A very new environment, yeah.
Well, we were 5 years ago.
Yeah. So, so what I would tell you is, I don't know if any of you all got pulled into this, but this is a huge deal right now. The secretary was out at CENTCOM a few weeks ago, And one of the things they've heard from CENTCOM Commander is, hey, you're sending me this new kit, new counter UAS capabilities, for example, and we're having a really hard time integrating that into our existing C2. And so the security says, well, I'm going to fix that. And for the last 2 weeks, we've had a team at Fort Carson, Colorado, I think it's referred to as Operation Jailbreak. Sometimes it's referred to as a hackathon. But basically, they said the IBCS and IBCS maneuver, so the two air defense command and control systems, we want those companies and those government experts out there and all of the kit that we're trying to plug into that architecture. We want it all out there with all the industry experts. And you guys are going to figure out how do you tie this stuff together and end up with, at a very high level, I'll call it, an SDK or an open standard that we can publish that says, hey, if you're going to plug into the Army's air and missile defense architecture, here's everything you need to know, and your interface must be open in order to do that. I think I ran into one of the PMs on the way back yesterday, and I think they were partially successful. There's some things that they're trying to work out from a classification standpoint, but I mean that ability to integrate, and you'll hear the secretary now refer to. You've heard the right to repair, been a lot in the news. The new one you're going to hear is right to integrate. I don't want bespoke interfaces that I always have to go back and pay a lot of money to the owner of that system in order to integrate it. I want to be able to seamlessly integrate very rapidly. And so that's one of the things that we're thinking about from command and control. The other thing that we're looking at from command and control as the Army looks at its larger next-gen C2 enterprise is the ability for things to operate almost like an app, if you will. Think about, what if IBCS or IBCS maneuver in particular is an app that plugs into, an ATEC tablet or the larger ecosystem to provide that functionality. And that gives us the ability now, if somebody comes in with, a new capability, whether it's in AI or some other facet of that command and control, to seamlessly integrate it, much like, you can download stuff off the, Google Store or the Apple Store and plug it together. The Army is really focused on centralizing, so from an air defense perspective, IBCS is the Army solution, but they are looking at how to make the integration much more seamless. And then what the Army refers to as IBCS maneuver, the Anduril Lattice system, and primarily focused on counter UAS at the maneuver battalion level. That's Anduril's Lattice has been selected as what's going to be IBCS maneuver. But I think what you would hear Army leaders say is they don't want to lock themselves into a single vendor solution, because if somebody else comes along with a better solution in 2 years, I want to be able to seamlessly switch to that. Which again goes back to, and I think a huge part of what we're looking at is how do we ensure that those interfaces are well understood so that we make that integration. Integration is going to be the name of the game. Some of the things that we've talked about is we're probably going to be much more in the integration systems of systems type game than we are in developing new widgets. Type.
Jim?
Yes.
Who's leading up the Fort Carson?
So it's being led by PAE Fires. They're the first ones in the hopper, and in particular, it's falling under the CPE Defensive Fires, Colonel Gallo.
Back here, please.
Yeah, back here.
Yes, sir, Carl, with Kratos Defense. What advantage do organizations that have a government-owned solution for the open system, the apps, the AI, all of those factors, what advantage does the government system have when they're going against a BE system from General Dynamics or that sort of thing? So how can you break through when you have a government-owned solution?
Yeah, so I think the key for us, and frankly, it's an evolving thing, is that, a lot of decisions are being made because there've been a lot of people in the building, right? A lot of people in the building, very senior leaders, and offering capability at a much lower cost and the ability to go much, much faster. And I think in some ways we've been seen as a little bit non-responsive, like keep saying, no, we gotta do it the old way. And so part of what we're really working on is playing the role of looking at, whether it's a government developed system or some of these new capabilities that industry is bringing to the table. We're trying to look at how do we do an honest assessment, an unemotional honest assessment, because I'm going to tell you we're really bad at being unemotional about it because we've been in the business so long that we think we know what the answer is. But how do we do an unemotional assessment of here's what it will do, here's what it won't do, here are the risks that we're accepting, so that senior leaders can make those risk-informed decisions. So, I think the best answer is, General Lozano, from a fire's perspective anyway, and frankly, all of the PAEs have very easy direct access to the chief, the vice chief, and under for the Army. And I think we're doing it, at least they're doing what they call a portfolio review at least twice a year. And that gives them the ability to come in and say, hey, this is what we think we need to be doing going forward. So it's an opportunity, getting in front of the PAE or, through the PMs or through the labs to say, hey, here's a capability that we think is, has a lot of benefits. It's government owned, and I know, Company X is out here with their competitor to that. But we think it's worth doing a side-by-side comparison and see which one's better. I think we're moving into, it's a really interesting dynamic right now when you talk about government-owned versus industry developed, is we are trying to figure out, like, I don't necessarily have to know your secret sauce or understand your secret sauce. I probably just want to own the interfaces, and I want to understand the performance so I know how the overall system affects. And so what we're trying to determine is where do we draw that boundary between what we can just take from you because it's formed well and integrated into a larger construct, and maybe the most important thing for the government to own or to be published is those ICDs, electromechanical, logical ICDs that allow us to integrate things seamlessly. As an example, so the Army's asked us to develop a 4.75-inch unguided rocket to go in their multiple launch rocket system. And what they're looking for is something that goes between 40 kilometers and 70 kilometers, so shorter range than Himmler's, but longer range than artillery can easily get to at this stage. And what they're interested in is low cost and mass. And of course, our first response from our team was, we're gonna design and build this rocket. And I said, no, we're not. What we're gonna build and design is the pod and the interface to that pod, because I think industry can build a rocket, and I think what we want to define for the industry is how to get their rocket in our pod so that I can buy rockets from anybody who comes to the table and demonstrates that. So we're focused on enabling the Army to continuously evaluate who's got the best rocket, or, hey, you know what? They got a really great rocket, but they can only build so many. They got a really great rocket, they can only build so many, but together I can build a lot. And so I can buy from both companies seamlessly. Right? So I think you're going to see more and more of, we're more interested in the ability to integrate than we are about owning the secret sauce inside. And from a command and control perspective, that's an area that we've been really been a real struggle because from a command and control perspective, you know, for example, with AFATIDS and AdC2, our air defense and long-range fighters, we owned all that code. And we thought that was a really good thing because we could adapt it, modify it, but now we're gonna, and we own IBCS, we own all the food for IBCS. But now we're gonna integrate Lattice into that. We're not gonna own what's inside black box Lattice. And maybe that's okay. That's okay. As long as we can integrate. Yes, ma'am.
Michelle Pratt, Advent Defense Solutions. We've got some NavAir SBIRs, phase twos,
Okay.
and interested in transitioning those from NavAir over to the Army.
Okay.
Is that something that is of interest?
Yeah, so SBIRs, frankly, I gotta tell you, I don't know how SBIRs in the Army are gonna work going forward because they've moved the componency of SBIRs into what they call the PIT, the Pathways to Innovation. And I'm not sure exactly how that's gonna work, but that organization is focused on things that I can invest in and very quickly put it in the hands of an Army unit to experiment with. And so I don't know exactly how we're gonna play into that from a lab perspective. But in terms of if you've developed something under a phase two that we want to pick up and make further investments in, and certainly, you know, as an S&T organization, we can certainly be interested in doing that. I'm all about leveraging other people's money.
You gonna give me the hook, Joe? No, is there any final questions, folks? That's last chance. Now, we've been speaking a lot, and you, about, what came out. About the future.
Yep.
I've got a speaker gift for you.
Oh, okay.
I ran across this, what's it, 45, it's underneath something on my desk. It just shows you what my desk looks like.
Oh.
2005, anybody ever seen an org chart like this?
Name's probably on that org chart.
There are some folks on here that you recognize. Obviously, Dr. Corkle, Paul Ruffin's on here.
Yeah.
A lot of folks on here. Bill Lewis, of course, he's still rattling around.
Yep.
Susie Young's over UAH. You see all of them on here. This is just amazing to me. I'm gonna give it.
Okay, awesome. No, you're welcome.
Okay, would you bring up the slides, please, back in the room there? There we go. Okay, upcoming meetings. We just had this one. Fantastic. Thank you again, Dr. Kirsch. And by the way, the proceedings of this meeting will be posted on our NDIA website, working group website. 18 June, special. It's going to be in this very auditorium. There'll be an overflow in I-2 in case we max this one out. This one hosts 401 seats in this auditorium. We expect to max that out and maybe go over to I-2. We're going to stream it over into I-2 right next door here if we max out in here. That is our half-day forum contestant logistics. General U.S. Army Pacific, Charlie Flynn, will be here for a keynote address. He'll be introduced by Lieutenant General Mohan. It's contested logistics as it pertains to missiles in space. It's going to be quite exciting. We've got a panel lined up for you. Some keynote addresses that are just remarkable. Look for the announcement. Pass it along to your friends and bring everyone out. It's a half-day forum. That way I don't have to buy lunch for everybody. Special design. We do have, we'll have patients and so forth, we'll have a break. But anyway, it's going to be the same kind of format, except we're probably going to get out around noon. We'll start a little early, 7:30 reception, and we'll start the program at 8:30 and begin and then proceed with it on break. Do you have any additional comments that you'd like to make, Tom?
No, I think that'd be great.
Please come out for that. That'll be right here on next month, June 18th. Invite everyone. We also, after that, we have coming up, we have the Space Command Transition Team will be coming out to brief us. Major General Sergeant Grisham will be with us. He is the director of the Redstone Transition Team for the Space Command. And so please come out for that. Location for that will be, look for that announcement. We'll have a location for that shortly. But thank you all for coming today. Any final announcements or words? Yes, please.
Jessica Washburn, the ASIA Huntsville chapter president. To add on to this event, we have Seth Farrington come. He's the AvMC CDAO to talk more about AI utilization within AvMC, and that is Tuesday, June 30th. It's a luncheon, so if you want more information, just reach out to me or Joe Heyman in the back, or follow us on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thank you so much. One thing that's unique about the working group, it doesn't cost you anything. It's always going to be free, and everyone's always welcome to come to working group meeting. So that June 18th, and please come out. There's no admission fee, there's no RSVP required. Just come and show up and participate in the working group that day. June 18th, right here. Thank you again, Dr. Kirsch. Thank you for all your team and your preparation, your hard work, and all you do for our Army and for our nation every day. Thank you so very much. Let's give a warm round of applause. We'll see you next time. Thank you.